Okie dokie. Let's get this going. Make sure this looks right. Make sure the world hasn't blown up. Woo! Alright. Give the usual terrible intro to let people get in. Tonight's stream is probably going to be a little weird. We're competing with Corey and the State of the Union address for those in the United States, so that's rough competition. Rough competition. I don't know how many people actively watch the State of the Union anymore. I used to watch those things, but then I'm streaming on one, so what do you do? So let's see. Let's talk about a couple things really quick. Next week is the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society's meeting for the month, and we're having a live meeting with Eric Bodrock coming in, so I won't be here. I'll do the same thing I did last time, which is I'll do kind of a frequently asked questions. I'll put a poll up, or not a poll, but a community post. So for those of you who are here now, if you've got something like you really want me to answer in that community post, I'll have it up there, and you'll get it kind of a short video where we'll go over some questions. I might cover a couple frequently asked questions that I get pretty regularly as well that I haven't answered in the past live stream replacement. But yeah, I've had several busy weekends coming up. So this weekend I'm actually on a very short vacation, all of about a day and a half. I'm going to a friend's wedding out of state and then coming back. Next weekend is when I have my talk for the Greater Portland Aquarium Society, so GPAS. That's the 13th, right? I'm gonna look at my calendar real fast, make sure that's right. Yeah, so I'm doing it on the 13th. I think it's at noon, if I remember correctly, the meeting. I'd have to go dig out, but yeah, it'll be very similar to the talk I did for my club, just because I've been way too busy to build an entirely different talk in that period of time. The one that I did for my club will have some alterations for the Portland Aquarium Society. It'll probably be shorter, for one, based off some feedback of the first time I did my talk, and a few extra things that are pertain directly to how that club's horticulture awards program works. So if you happen to be in the Portland area and you want to just come listen to me babble about plants for a while, show up. Or if you just want to pester me in person, show up. Either way, I'll be down there. I get to hang out for a bit with Daniken Aquatics, which will be fun. It's my friends, Danny and Kenny E. Be good stuff. Which means that also got to mention, because he had a Kenny, that is from Daniken Aquatics, put out the announcement of the speakers at the upcoming Fishtoberfest this year, which, I mean, we're talking October, but still, I'm going to be speaking at that. I'll have a new talk special for just Fishtoberfest. I have to work with Kenny because it's a 2-day event, so maybe I get to speak slightly longer. Previously, it was hey, try to make it 30-35 minutes, but he might be fine with me talking longer because it's a 2-day event. I got to just see what the scheduling's like, because if I can prepare slightly longer, I might prepare slightly longer. But if the half-hour mark is kind of what we're shooting for, that actually kind of makes it easier because it narrows some of the topics we can talk about. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but it'll be new for just that thing. And yeah, I'll get it filmed. I'll make sure that it's recorded and everything. It'll go up on my channel, all the kind of usuals. I haven't decided if I'm going to record the Portland Aquarium Society's talk, just because it's basically so similar to the talk that I did for my club that, I don't know that it's worth putting it up again. But chat, by all means, you tell me what you want. Chat, you get to decide a lot of things. You have the power. And yeah, I kind of expect today's to be a little quiet because you have lots of things going on. I don't care your party affiliation, but a lot of people, I think, in general, you should just the State of the Union address if you're in the United States is an important thing. You don't necessarily have to watch it live, but you should at least get the Cliff Notes. And then, of course, Corey's streaming right now, and I think there's somebody else streaming too. I think Alex is probably like finishing up his stream, and it's become very busy on Tuesdays. It's kind of wild. I don't know. Maybe that will spell doom and gloom for my streams. I don't know. That's a good... Bob, you actually have a good point. So Bob Purcell mentions record it for the Q&A, and that might be something that's worth recording specifically the Q&A. Because it'll be so similar, right, the talk. Because I'm basically just taking my current talk, trimming it down some, and making some small alterations that are specific to the Portland Aquarium Society's HAP program. Versus how I did stuff for the Seattle Aquarium Society. But, it's kind of... The basic lessons there are all still the same and relevant. What else do I want to talk about? Well, we'll have Q&A. I got a couple questions already served up, so... yeah, what's after that? So, my brain is everywhere today, good lord. It's probably because, I'm just, trying to figure out my schedule before I fly out for all of, a day and a half and then fly back to the state. It's going to be the shortest vacation ever, but, the person whose wedding I'm going to, he's the guy that me and him started together on my current project. He's since moved on, but, we founded the team that I'm in charge of, so... He became a very, very good friend. We talk pretty regularly via text, even though he's not on my team anymore. And just, I'm going to go watch him get married. Because, he's my buddy. All right, so, let's talk a couple things that I need your help on. It'll probably become a community poll, too. So you got a bunch of things that the community will need to just give me information on. But... for you folks live, I really value your input. It's always fun, hearing what you think. So we've got the talk in Portland. Then we've got Fishtoberfest way later in the year. There's the quadruple crown. It's the triple crown, but also the rainbow fish nerds are going to be there in July, and that's kind of all that I'm scheduled for at the moment. But there are several people who have become friends or at least acquaintances of mine in this lovely human malware time of fish where we can't go to other people's homes, which is crazy. And I'm curious what you guys would want to see first, because eventually I'm going to go through all these people. But I'm going to list off a couple things. In chat, I want you to influence how this goes, and then maybe that'll determine what ends up on the poll or how I phrase the poll. I don't know. So we have Shrimpy Business, my buddy Nick. I'm still meaning to do a shrimp room tour because, it's not a fish room, it's a shrimp room. And just kind of a follow-up to our interview with him. He's just such a fantastic person. So that's one of the things I want to do. Another one is going to see Will at Northwest Aqua Hobby. It used to be Pacific Northwest. I think he changed that pretty recently. And talking about immersed grown plants with him and kind of what fueled him to go the route he's going, right? He's basically developing his own small plant farm, and he sells plants through his website and all that kind of stuff, and he's got his YouTube channel, all those kind of things, but it's I did Plants for Profit for quite a while, and now he's really going Plants for Profit. And we've talked back and forth several times. I've given him some suggestions on plants. He's run with a couple, all sorts of stuff. So there's that option where we do more plant talk, right? Or I also have a friend. You guys will remember that I was on the Aquarium Insider podcast, and his channel is not huge, although I think it should be bigger than it is, because, and let me link it to you guys, because he's got great stuff. But, there we go. We'll get that into the chat. Uh-oh. Short announcement that I missed. I better go check that out soon. Anyway, now he runs a fish farm. He grew up on a fish farm in Florida. This is someone who has done fish much like Dan of Dan's Fish, basically his whole life. But rather than maybe from a perspective of importing and things like that, like we get with Dan, this is somebody who's been farming angelfish and at a commercial level in Florida. And he's got a pretty sizable fish farm. For those who might not be familiar, that's the Consolidated Fish Farms, right? Which there's a little story behind that, but basically walking through his story. So kind of like how I interviewed Nick or Jason over at Redfish Bluefish, just kind of telling their story about what led them to where they are now in our fish industry. Those are kind of the three top of mind for me. There's a couple other small ones that I'm still working on. I have to get in contact with certain people. Like there's a person who runs a more local fish rescue, kind of like how there's the Ohio Fish Rescue, although certainly not to the scale that Big Rich is going with over there. But what possesses a person to want to open that in Washington of all places? Because it's not like you have the weather that allows you to do a lot of outdoor stuff, and some of the trials and tribulations of trying to set that up, and what that really looks like from a perspective of a hobbyist who's like, yeah, I'm just going to take in kind of whatever fish people have and become a rescue, like we would with our dogs or our cats, right? That's one of the ones I'm trying to kind of nail down. I got to see the particular guy who runs the small rescue, like used to work or still works. I haven't seen him the last couple of times I've gone to a little local fish store that I go to, but he worked in the fish section there. I talked to him. He knew me by face, and I was like, hey man, if you ever want to give a little publicity to your place, or if you're planning on doing a YouTube channel, I'd be happy to come through and talk with you. And I haven't seen him since, so hopefully that gets squared away. So yeah, that's the option. So option one is, of course, we tour the shrimp room at Shrimpy Business. Option two is we go see Will and we talk about immersed plants, why immersed plants, how that could affect us as hobbyists in the sense of why should we look at growing immersed plants potentially. There's a couple people who are in the member-only Discord that are like immersed plant growing geniuses, and they do some amazing stuff. And then number three is Aquarium Insider. What makes you basically want to keep living on a fish farm and compete with the toughness that is imported farms that can do huge scale for a lot less cost, right? You think about like your stuff out in Thailand and stuff like that, where just like so many things are basically free for them. What keeps somebody doing that kind of stuff? So those are the options. Chat, I want to hear what you have to say, and hopefully like my live chat hasn't froze itself. But then again, we are a little light on people, and I understand why. It's a busy night, so this might be like the most intimate chat we have. You guys might get like all your questions ever answered. So chat, let me know what you think about that, and then we'll roll into the question and answer session of life. I'll start with Leo. He was here very early. So I need some advice. My Panda Pisto looks to have Camellaris worms. I think you mean Camellanus, but it's okay. That's a weird word. So treated the tank, but like 2 to 3 weeks ago, I moved one rainbow and 2 L397s to 2 different tanks. Do I treat those two? Oof. This is why it's so many people like say, hey, quarantine, or B, don't move your fish and play like musical fish too often because of issues like this. So realistically, what you need to do is go look at the fish you moved, look at the rainbow, it's going to be really hard with the L397s, but look to see if you see signs of Camellanus worms. If you do, treat. Now, you could just play it super safe and treat anyway. The best treatment for camellitis worms is levamisole. It works like a dream, but you do have to do it over a couple courses. What levamisole does, right? It's an antiparasitic, but specifically it's a dewormer. What levamisole does to camellitis worms specifically is it paralyzes them. So it doesn't kill them, but what it does is it makes it so they can't keep themselves inside the fish's body because they're paralyzed, so their ability to hold themselves in place goes away and the fish is able to push them through, right? Once they're out, we need that medicine to keep acting and keep them paralyzed so that we can either A, gravel vac them up, which usually the recommendation is when you do your water change, you very, very, very thoroughly gravel vac to get up as much of that stuff as you can and get it gone. Or two, we keep them paralyzed so long they die because they're unable to feed. Now, I've used levamisole once in the past. I had an outbreak of camellitis worms from some rainbows that I bought from a store that is no longer in business, so that should say a few things for you. But it works like a dream. You just got to follow the instructions, be very methodical, don't shortcut. Don't try to play it fast. Don't do one dose and be like, oh, look, I don't see worms anymore. We're okay. Follow it to a T. If you do not follow the instructions from levamisole to a T, and my suggestion is always to just go to Greg Sage's website, select aquatics, follow his instructions perfectly. Even if you don't get the levamisole from him, although that's where I would personally get it because he's got the good stuff, follow those instructions to a T. Because that is going to be your absolute best method to get rid of camellitis worms. Okay? That's that. Leo, Team Bentley, thanks, buddy. Thanks. Hey, man. You know, sometimes the small streams are fun because we get to have a more intimate conversation, right? Jacob Hill, my Java Fern seems healthy, but some of the leaves are turning brown and melting and turning clear. Do you know what the deficiency could be? I emailed you pictures, and it's still growing. Yeah, I'm trying to play catch-up again. Most likely... So, eventually, old leaves are going to die off. Like, you're never going to keep a leaf forever. Even in some of my super lush Java Fern, if I actually, like, really look deep, I can find ones that are browning and getting some holes in them. But a majority of the plant is okay. So as long as you see like 95% of the plant is okay, it's probably just the old leaves finally dying off. They're not going to stay there for an eternity. However, if we're seeing it more widespread, say like 20% of the leaves or more, then you got a couple issues. Most likely what we're dealing with is either it needs a little bit more potassium or turning brown and melting back. Very frequently, this can be nitrogen. You typically don't see a lot of yellowing in Java Fern just because of the way the plant is. It goes kind of straight to that brown phase. You can see it. I want to be clear. I don't want somebody to go, of course you could see it. It's just less likely like it is in a stem plant just because of the way that it works. There's a lot of stuff that could potentially be going on, but I would say that the short term is let's make sure that it hasn't gotten like so big that it's starting to cannibalize itself, which does happen as a Java Fern gets really, really huge. It'll try to cannibalize some of the older growth. And two, let's not be afraid to dose a little bit of micronutrients to help it out. You could use something like Seachem Trace. It's about the only Seachem fertilizer product I actually like. I much prefer like Brightwell's Florin Multi for that kind of job, but I would look at something like that in order to help get some micronutrients in there, especially potassium. That's the nice part about Florin is it contains potassium. There's a few other things that do too. It's not those only two. There's lots of them that do. Just don't have something that has nitrogen and phosphate in it. You want all the micros plus like potassium. And see if that perks it up. If it doesn't, then we're actually probably looking at like not enough nitrogen for the amount of plant mass we have. Maybe we've got some really aggressive growers that are using most of it, and the Java Fern only has enough nitrogen, blah, blah, blah. But I'll look at the pictures and respond relatively soon. I'm trying to make sure that I've got all my like filming and editing done before I'm basically gone for the entire weekend. And then again for the subsequent weekend, because I'm doing small busy spike at work again. Plus, I have the talk in Portland, so I kind of have to like prep for that as well. They finally had returned everyone to work, so it's gotten busy because there's a ton of people like getting used to being back on campus as opposed to working remote, where I've been on campus the whole time. So that's kind of caused an uptick in some stuff that's going on for us, probably for like the first 2 weeks, and then we'll go back to kind of a more normal pace where it's not like too psycho. There's chat moving. Sweet chat. Thank you. Coffee guns and aquariums. I love that name. Good to see you, man. All right, Danny, we're talking. I want to create a lovely planted tank for some special Bozeman rainbows that I received. I want to have good substrate, but I'm worried about making the pH too high. I mean, any of your buffering planted substrates do a good job. Like I've had plenty of good luck, if you will, with using like Fluval Stratum, Brightwells, Rio Oscuro. I like the Rio Oscuro over the Cafe just for color wise. You could do Amazonia, but I feel like it's overpriced. There's UNS Contra Soil. Any of those, they all do the same thing, basically put. They all do fine, but I would mix in like a little bit of Eco Complete so you're not like going too crazy. Keep in mind that like most of the Bozemanite tend to be from lakes. Lake rainbows do like a little bit of mineral content in their water. Now they don't want something like 800 TDS of GH or something, right? Or like pH 9. But if you can get that pH like 7.5, 7.6, somewhere around there, that'd be fine. It'd be fine. They like a little mineral content. The big thing with rainbows is they just like good oxygenation and good water quality. Other than that, they're pretty flexible fish. They can handle a ton. They can go soft. They can go hard. That's just the way they are. They're actually really flexible fish. The only problem that you have with rainbows in the long run, other than they need those bigger tanks, but you've got bigger tanks, I know you do, is they're slightly more susceptible to TB than basically any other fish out there. So in a lot of places where you would be like, it's fish TB, in rainbows it actually is like likely to be fish TB because their immune systems are not prepared to handle it as well as a lot of the other fish that are in the trade, where a lot of the other fish are more resilient to it naturally, so you don't tend to see fish TB rear its ugly head with a lot of the other fish that are kept in the hobby and have been in the hobby for a long time. But as long as you keep everything fine and your fish came from a good source, you don't have to worry about it. Easy peasy. Mike Standby, I wonder what effects this war has on rare Ukraine fish imports. I mean, yeah, a lot of epistos come from there. So, a lot of the stuff that comes out of the Ukraine also comes from places like Poland. So, as long as the Polish exporters are still shipping fish out, you'll probably be okay. But, I mean, it's going to affect a lot of people in the Ukraine. Plain and simple. This is not about politics. Just war affects anybody that's in that country, a neighboring country, a country involved in it, period. And it's terrible, man. It's terrible. It's terrible. Like, it's just, there's no good answer to anything. Like, I certainly don't want us to commit to a bunch of stuff because there's massive fears that are involved here, but you also just can't let, like, other nations get completely stomped. It's just bad, man. I wish people who have, like, that level of power could learn to check their egos, but humans are inherently fallible, man. We screw up all the time. Even those of us who are in control of way too much stuff. And that's the problem. Olivier, hey, Billy, I wanted to say a quick hello. I'm too tired to stay. Good night. Good night, man. I totally understand that. Jason B. Bentley broke chat. I don't know. I think my chat was just like, yeah. Like, just, I'll catch up in a bit. Bob Purcell, why do you think people go nuts for Boost? Why are there more variants versus Anubias or Java Fern? The question is there a real answer or is there my heavily opinionated answer? My heavily opinionated answer is this. It is very easy for the boost sellers right now to give some random name to a boost that came from a different location, even though if we were to do all of the genetics and all of the work we need to do, the botany, etc., that would actually scientifically describe the plant, it's probably the same freaking plant. It's kind of like how you have tons and tons and tons of different cribensis in the sense of all the Pelvicochromis tenniatus, right? There's thousands of different catch locations because there's all these little streams and this and that they come from, and they all have minor differences in their color variation. There's very few that have a big one. Like there's Nigerian reds, that's kind of a big one. But, for the most part, they all look really, really similar. But we describe them by catch locations, and we know that they're all some kind of Pelvicochromis tenniatus, but they all haven't been scientifically described individually by each location. And this happens to rainbows, too. There's like 30 different Goldii species, but we're not sure all of them are actually Goldii. They just look close enough to Goldii, so we call them blank Goldii catch locations, like Goldii Decai, Goldii this, Goldii that, right? Boost, it's even worse. Boost, it's worse because there's so many individual little water systems in Borneo all over the place, and portions of large water systems where these plants grow. They're very, very prevalent out there, but each location has some different, whether it's a genetic mutation or evolution, whatever you want to call it, it has grown into over time, that is a small difference. So we just give it a different name. And sometimes, I swear, it's like, oh, well, I saw it in this light and it had a blue sheen, so I'm going to call it Hades Blue or Arrogant Blue or Azure Jim Bob, whatever, right? And then, oh, well, I got this stuff, and when I looked at it, it had more of a purple sheen. So now it's Violet Jim Bob. It's like, it's the same frickin' plant. It's the same frickin' plant. But that's the problem. Because Boost has this huge demand and stuff's coming in like crazy, and a lot of it is not sustainably harvested in any way, shape, or form. It is being decimated in the wild. You get all this random nonsense, but because it's got a new name, people clamor for it. And it's like FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. You get all this cool stuff, and the more you hear from people, it's like, oh, I got this amazing boost, it's blah, blah, blah. And when you look at it in this light, at this angle, under the quarter moon, with during the equinox of the... We can do the same thing to a lot of plants. The only problem is Boost is one of those rare ones that has this natural iridescence in a plant, where Anubias does not. Anubias doesn't have that sheen, that iridescence that causes our eyeballs, which, as we well know, are very fallible. They literally make information up. If you look at the science of how sight works, you can perceive things one way, but then, Jim, the colorblind guy, can perceive it a different way. Or this guy who has, baseball player perfect vision, sees it a different way. And then there's Bentley down the road. Well, that guy wears glasses all the time, and that slightly adjusts the way the light bounces off this, but he needs those glasses to see that stupid thing. So that makes it look like this. And yeah, you can slam the rant things in chat for members. Go nuts, because this is a rant. This is what kills me about Boost. The biggest problem is that we have a myriad of different species that are probably not different species. They're different catch locations of the same species. And because of that, or because of the one person that farmed it out in who knows where, renamed it to make it something different, new, and rare, so that they could basically charge more money. It is marketing BS. I used to work in marketing. Take it from me. My job, I will tell you a small story on the side of this, part of this rant. I used to work in the flooring industry. I used to be a marketing coordinator was my job, but basically put any piece of digital or printed advertising went through my hands. So I worked with several artists, and I wrote copy on stuff. And I would go to my vice president of products. Fancy title to basically say the one guy who went to China and ordered all of our proprietary product. Okay? Before I ended up taking over part of that job and trying to make stuff better. He would give me like the same products over and over and over again that were on sale. And I basically had to find a way to spin the sale as different, even though the price like never changed. Until finally, like, my morals got the better of me, and I went to him, you know, this is illegal, right? If you say the same thing is on sale enough times in a row, you can no longer say it's on sale. That's actually a type of like price manipulation that is illegal in the United States. He's Canadian, so, you know, I'm kidding. Canadians, you know I love you. But it's just like, it's spin. That it's the same thing, where it's basically like, what new boost came in? Oh, it looks just like Catherine A. Red, but, oh, if you get it under this one light in this tank, it looks darker red. Let's call it Catherine I. Crimson, or Catherine I. Blood Red. Oh, no, wait, no. This one's more like Catherine I. Burgundy. It's just making up bull. It's bull. That's what it is. Find stuff that has very interesting patterns. Now, I can talk about some of the bigger leaf stuff. An example, I have Silverstein, I have Pink Lady, I have Black Marble. I have, there's one other one. They all have the same rough leaf size and shape, everything. The rhizomes look the same. However, in the case of these plants, they have a significant difference in either the top sheen or the underside of the plant. So the underside of the leaf looks significantly different and obvious plant to plant. And it's the only reason why I have them different and why I bought all of them. Because the Black Marble really does have kind of a cool black, I would say more like black pearl than marble, but they call it marble, pearly black luminescence. Let's try that one, even though it's not a luminescence, it's an iridescence, but that's being persnickety. The Silverstein really does have kind of a silver hue to it when you get the angle of the light correct. And all that is basically like, instead of looking at it completely top down, your plant's here and your line of sight is like this, about a 45-degree angle or so. And you get those neat iridescences pretty well on boosts. A little bit of help to how to photograph boosts. But for the most part, they're all the frickin' same. They're just like 7 different names for the same plant. Like, there's all the brownie species, and most of them look exactly the same, but they have different names, and they've been cultivated like that for a while, so they keep those different names. But you show me a brownie blue that actually looks blue, and then show me a brownie purple that actually looks purple. They don't. They look the frickin' same. The only one that's different is the brownie brown or the brownie ghost, and those have slightly different looks. Drives me crazy. That's why people go nuts for boosts. It's marketing spin. People who sell the stuff tap into like the dumb part of our brain that goes like, oh, it's new, it's special. I could be the only one that has it. I will be the one. But there's like 50 other ones until they make up the next one that's the same plant, and then it's oh my god. A new boost. No one has it. No one. No one in my state. Maybe not even the US yet. I could be the one. It's only $150 for 3 leaves. I'll do it. 3 days later. My god, look at it. It's magnificent. That one has 4 leaves. Look at the hue. The Photoshop is incredible. It's got to be different. I must get another one. It's marketing bullshit. Oh, all right. I'm done raging. I'm done raging about boosts. I love boosts as a plant, but man, I hate the way it's sold. It drives me wild, as is obvious by that like 10-minute rant of psychosis. Ah, see, I saw people in chat. Oh, lordy. Okay. Okay. Let's get back on topic. Rico Stan. Bentley, what was that? Just curious, what was I doing when you saw me yesterday? Was I acting furtive? No, man. The dude, it looked a lot like you was just in a truck driving in traffic. I looked over and I was like, that guy looks really, really close to Rico Stan. I'm like, maybe 100 feet later, he was taking an off-ramp and I was still stuck in traffic. Oh, Lord. Okay. Cubby girl, listening to the stream while cleaning makes the work much more enjoyable. Glad to catch you while you're live. Why, thank you very, very much. I'm glad I can make your cleaning work easier and or more tolerable because of my goofy psycho butt. Crypt Keeper Aquatics Bentley Rotala Tulu. Oh, man, you're going to get me started on this too. Rotalas make me feel similar. Melting back miserably in a tank. I'm changing to Caridina parameters. Okay, so softer water in general. Not a lot of carbon hardness. Stem is starting to rot as well. Should I just yank them out and buy new after cycle catches back up? So most likely, what you're probably running into is a lot of those rotalas actually really need injected CO2. And if you don't have injected CO2, they tend to struggle. Because Rotala is a finer leaf plant, my dogs are losing their mind, they really need super high light, and typically in order to handle that super high light, they need that extra carbon in order to photosynthesize and process it correctly without getting other issues to occur inside the tank. Not 100% the issue, but tends to be. Tends to be in my experience. When I've had some of the more finicky Rotalas have issues with me, it's usually a matter of not enough CO2 and or not enough light. Or, I mean, they are a very fast grower, so there's potential that there's not enough of what they need in the water. But if you're having some melt back, and if it's relatively new, it could also be just trying to convert and struggling because it's already planted down. Try just like weighing it down and letting it grow fresh roots in your water system first before you plant it into the substrate. It'd be my biggest piece of advice, especially if you're going to buy some new ones. But if you can trim the dead off and still have some stem left, what I would do is trim off all that dead or rot, right? That should trigger at this new point fresh roots to start growing. Let those roots grow. Once you get them, then plant it down, and it has a much higher chance to recover instead of just melting completely away. Son of a quack, on the subject of QT tanks, do you think I need to bleach this QT tank that had a sick Cory for a few days? Sick pygmy Cory got ick and lost it before passing, all in 4 days. Need to mention it was cold. So you don't necessarily need to bleach it, but I would certainly drain the tank entirely and either let it air dry, or a personal preference is take a little bit of hydrogen peroxide to it and just let the peroxide kind of kill everything. Let it completely dry out, because most aquatic things don't do very well when they are exposed to oxygen and have no water to keep them going. And then from there, you should be okay. Now, if you want to take the nuclear method and bleach it, you certainly can. But just make sure that you very, 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 very thoroughly clean it afterward. Lots of rinsing, maybe in some dechlorinator. Rinse it again, and then then start doing some testing to make sure that everything's okay in there before you ever put fish in it again. Right? You just got to be super careful whenever you use bleach. Super, super careful. Mario Villalobos. Any tips on growing plants up out of the tank? I'm going to set up a new rimless tank with some pothos monsters and peace lilies growing out of the water. Yeah. So in a lot of those plants, right, pothos doesn't want to grow out of the water. What it wants to be, or rather, it doesn't want to be in the water and try to grow out. It wants to dip its roots in and grow across something else. So typically with the pothos, you'll vine it out of a filter or something like that, and let it have a physical source to hold on to and let its roots grow into the water. Now, in the case of peace lilies, they just need their roots to get in the water. So the easiest way to do that is to have a majority of the plant up above the water, wherever the foliage is, and set up some kind of elevated platform or what have you that shifts all of the what's going to hold the piece of lid down, or up in the case of how deep it is in our water, higher in the water column, so that the roots have a spot to sit there and soak stuff up, but a majority of the plant, especially all the foliage, is completely out of the water. You can do the same thing with some of like the monsteras. You can even do this with like draconeas in some cases. Like I have that one that's in one of my tanks. Peace lilies tend to do this a lot better, so does pothos, but that's the general thing, is make sure that the whole plant isn't underwater, because it'll just die if you do that. If you can, use some hardscape, build yourself kind of a shelf, if you will, that part of the plant can sit underwater, and the rest of it can grow out, and that's where all your foliage is and all that kind of nice stuff, and then it looks pretty and does cool stuff. I'm sure there's probably way better people to explain that, but that's the short version. Connor Costello, how much do plants need iron? What happens if not enough? Also, why are my stem plants dying? Those easy green have dirt, nicrolite, moneywort, and Hygrophila corymbosa. So if your plants are relatively new, they're converting. And while they're converting from immersed grown to submerged growth, they're going to look like they're dying. It's a tough process. A lot of plants that we buy are straight from a farm where they're grown out of water, and only the very bottom of the roots are in some water. These are like riverine systems or drain systems. All of that growth is not handled to survive underwater. So it basically has to consume itself while it creates new submerged growth that is now changed and shifted to handle being underwater during this process. What the big problem is, a majority of sellers, not all, but a majority, do not help you along in that process. They will get their bunch plants in and they will almost immediately sell them. They don't try to convert them for you. Aquarium Co-op is one of the few that actually does the work. And part of that just involves pumping a bunch of CO2 in order to help facilitate that process. Those plants need more carbon in order to build more structure, and liquid carbon doesn't do the trick. You need gaseous carbon, aka CO2. That's why we inject CO2. It's way, way, way more effective than anything else. That helps the plant have the building block necessary to build all that new submerged growth with all the other minerals and things that they're looking for out of our macro and micronutrients, in order to convert themselves from the stuff that can't handle being underwater to the stuff that can handle being underwater. And during that process, part of your plant will look like it's dying. That's just nature. It doesn't matter whether you have them in a pot, whether you have them in substrate, whether you have them in like the full ADA setup that cost you $8 billion, or whether you have them in sand. It still has to go through that process. Typically, and by typically I mean 90% of the time I get the question, why are my stem plants dying? This is why. Now there's other things that tell us certain other things, like if your plants are getting very translucent and it's the new growth, looks very small and pale, not necessarily yellow, but very pale green and or almost white, that is an iron deficiency. Sometimes it's also magnesium or manganese, but typically it is iron. How much do plants need iron? An amount. It depends on the plant. Some plants, cryptocorynes for example, really like excessive amounts of iron compared to some other plants that don't need very much. Red plants, while there's a big debate about whether they need iron, all plants need some amount, and we're trying to get that deeper scarlet color. For the most part, a little extra iron helps, but so does nitrogen starvation and all sorts of other tactics, basically blasting them with so much light that they're kind of like sunburning themselves, if you will. A lot of things. But that's the basics. How much do they need iron? Usually a good all-in-one fertilizer has enough iron in it, unless you have a lot of crypts, or there's a few other plants that are specifically kind of iron hungry, and it's kind of a tough list, but basically some of your red plants is a short answer. And other plants that grow very similar to crypts tend to be slightly more iron hungry because of how it helps them grow. Hope that makes sense. Hope that helps. All right. I see one of my coworkers in chat. I see my lady saying hello as I start catching up from my long rant. Kanan, I bought a used 75-gallon tank, and I saw a crack in one of the bottom corners of the black rim and not the glass. Should I be worried when I fill up the tank? No? Yes. So, here's... I know, super helpful. What I would do is, as long as the weather is reasonably warm outside, it's not super cold, is find a good spot outside that's flat to set that tank on, where you can get a hose and start filling it with water. Basically, what we're going to do is water test your tank. You can crack the rim without hurting the glass or the seals, but sometimes a crack in the rim is evidence that something else is wrong somewhere else. So what we do is we fill it up and we let it sit for like a week, especially if the water's nice, maybe even 2. And if you don't have any leaks, you're all right. And you'll be able to tell, right? You'll be able to tell if it's leaking or not. You know, if your dog comes by and is drinking out of it, and you're like, oh man, there's less water than there was yesterday. Where's the leak? But all of your pavement is perfectly dry, and there's no part of the outside of the tank that feels wet. You're okay. Try to get a small stand to lift it up from. That helps too, because then you can look for like water tracing on a small table or stand or whatever you've got. These are all ways that I've done in the past. Whenever I bought a used tank, I test them. I don't necessarily set them up right away in my house and just go like, it's got to be fine. Start filling it. Test your tanks. Take that extra time. Be patient. It will save you a lot of headache in the long run. Elephant Ice. How many holes does a straw have? One could argue a straw only has one hole. You could also argue that it has 0 holes, as it's a perfect cylinder, and it's not necessarily a hole, but it's just wrapped around empty space. You could be that psycho who says they have 2 holes. Alec every once in a while has some fun joke questions, and I'll follow your troll, man. I'll bring it on. Woo. Bob Purcell, on a side note, don't get great stuff foam on your hands. Looks like I'll be taking patches of my hands to work tomorrow. Thought it was dry when I started carving. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Uh-oh. Man, I got an abstract question. Before I get to the abstract question, I'm going to do a small aside. It's one of those times where we get to a fun lesson in life. So I found out today that one of my he kind of works under me, but works on a team adjacent to me. But you know, I lead one of the 3 teams that is a greater test team, right? And there's a particular gentleman who got hired on, I think 7 months ago, something like that. That out of nowhere, I was just like, hey, what are you doing here? Because I grew up in game stores, and I've known that guy since I was like 11 or 12. Right? We went to the same game store all the time. We even played some of the same games. I played D&D in a couple games with him. He's a good guy, right? Real nice guy. Kind of that small world feeling when somebody you've known since you were really young, but you really haven't hung out with in like 15 years, 20 years, just shows up at your work, and it's like, oh yeah, no, I work on this project. It's like, oh yeah, I lead one of the teams for that project. What team are you on? This team. Okay, so you're under that person. I'm his peer. I run one of the other teams, so I'll see you a bunch. Anyway, he had to take a leave of absence because, unfortunately, rather suddenly, his wife passed away. And now he's not a super old guy. He's, I think, in his mid-40s. And his wife was a little bit younger than him, but not to where you'd be like, this is normal, right? You're talking decades earlier than she probably should have passed. Very, very sad thing. My heart breaks at that kind of thought. And my only lesson, especially given the tumultuous times we are in with human malware, with geopolitical events, reach out to the people you love. Tell them you love them. Because you never know when they'll be gone. Now, a lot of us at work, for context, we're all kind of pooling money together to help out just because it's what we can do. My work, thankfully, has been very, very cool about giving him time he needs and as much support as we possibly can. It's one of the things that I really value about the company I work for is that they're really great at taking care of their people, especially given the last 2 years of human malware we've dealt with. We've had all sorts of things happen where they've just been fantastic. But make sure you reach out to the people you love. Please. Not just for me, for yourself. Because you just never know. The world is rough right now. The world is rough. Alrighty. That's my little PSA. And I'm donating basically a full month of my YouTube revenue to him. Which is not a lot, because I don't hyper push ads or anything, but, it's, for somebody in need, it's a decent chunk. Alright, I want to get to the last couple of questions. I had one, Crypt Keeper Aquatics had another cool question. You can only escape a tank, I can't escape, using 3 unique varieties within the Crypt family. Use as many plantlets of each as you want. What do you choose? I like it. I like the question. It depends on the size of the tank. And I mean height-wise. So, if you get enough of it, there's 2 different, tall crypts that I like. I like a Finis metallic red or red. There's very small differentiations between the 2, but they're both beautiful tall plants. They're a great background plant. In the middle, I would want, if I'm going that route, I would probably go with a Wendetii green or Lutea green hobbit. So I want a brighter green plant. Most people probably think, oh, it's going to be like Florida sunset or this or that. No. I want some green because I'm already getting some red and some dark green on my background. Then I'm going to do that. And then my smaller plants up front, that's where I'm going to go with Jacobson Eye Pink. I love that plant a lot. It's tough to say that one versus Nurii, but I can get Jacobson Eye Pink to carpet. And when you carpet that plant, whoo, it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So that would be my 3. I would probably say that the official 3 are Jacobson Eye Pink, Lutea Green Hobbit, which is becoming really hard to find, which sucks. And then finally, in the back, very tall tank, we're talking like 125 or something like that. I would choose Crypt Balancé instead. Right, so you get your tall, or no, not Balancé, but Spiralis. Balancé is like such a pain. It's finicky. Spiralis is fine. Get that nice tall grassy look. Or, if I'm going something like a 40 breeder, 75, or maybe I just don't want it to go all the way to the top, then I'm going to slot in that nice Affinis red or metallic red, just because it's got a nice big spear leaf shape. It really stands out. It looks different than a lot of the other crypts do. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Yeah. I like the question. I like it. Thanks, Jacob. I'll delete your middle post so he doesn't go searching. Oh, Lord. Yeah, you might have to just do all that stuff. I'll get your email, Jacob. I'll get to it. Dedicated Aquatics. It's like naming nail polish. Red, berry red, very red, red, red. Yeah. That's what boost feels like, man. Bob Purcell, if I want a neat boost that is reasonable, what would you recommend? Honestly, like, I love the bigger leafed boosts. Not Skeleton King and those kind, but I'm talking, so like Black Marble, Pink Lady, Silverstein. They'll have a slightly larger leaf. Very, very pretty. Very, very pretty. I think one of the easiest ones to get right now... Let me actually go to Boost Plant. Even though they're not necessarily the perfect option, they just have the best selection. I'm not sure how well they pay attention to making sure that your plants aren't, like, just harvested left and right. AKA just destroying the environment and not caring about it, but... I really wish there was a way to sort by leaf size. But no. No. Why would we do that? There's a... Okay, so here you go. Here's a farmed one. And that's the Boostea. So Theia. Also, the Godzilla is another one that's farmed really, really well. That is, you're not going to be, like, destroying an environment getting that one. Those tend to be a little bit larger leaved. If you can find it, right, I would totally get Black Marble. Black Marble is freaking amazing. So Silverstein, that's another one that, like, has that cool, very obvious pattern to it when you look at it at that angle. But they're both slightly bigger leafed. They're fairly easy to care for. Very, very pretty plants. Love them. I have them, love them. Alyssa Bentley is, like, has a Boost Brownie. Can't tell it from all the other Boost Brownies I have. It just looks like Godzilla and the others. About the only difference I could say from that particular one compared to all the other brownies, whatever you want to call them, is it has a lot more red on the underside of the leaf than a lot of the brownies, like the blue, the purple, brown, and all those. Those typically are green underneath. Small difference. I will say the one that you gave me is doing fantastic. It's flowering again, so thanks. It's looking great. Pyron Wang, is there any benefit or detriment to packing my Sarah reactor with media? If I make it similar to a Rex Griggs, essentially, but still with the fan blades to chop it up. I would use more open media, so similar to how, like, some of the other reactors, you'll use bio balls in them as opposed to more dense media. And you could use things like your, like, K1 Calda style medias, the smaller, like, plastic medias. Just try to have stuff that's a little more open. That would be my thing. Alex Kubanoff, well said, Bentley. They're probably ecological clines or morphs. Yeah, see, that's far more intelligible than anything I said. I just went on a long rant without using any proper terms, probably because I'm a dum-dum. But anyway, just like the foliage plant renaissance that Jimmy Gimbel is into, slap a Capuchin name on it and market it, and then it becomes like, yeah, it sells for billion. Man, I've been watching some of Jimmy's vlogs. I've been seeing some of his houseplants. He keeps going to a nursery, by the way. It's like 4 blocks from my house. Anytime you see him go to Kent East Hill Nursery, he's actually like within 10 minutes of my home. And I've like yelled at him twice for it. I was like, come over and say hi, you jerk. But that nursery is actually super cool. Just the family that runs it's very, very nice. All the people that are there, amazing. I took tomato plants I had to plant last year, and then I planted them way too late, so I never forgot anything out of them. But the people all there are just amazingly nice, and they were like, oh, yeah, here's this guy. He doesn't know anything about plants. Little do they know, as long as they're underwater, I know all sorts of stuff about them. Put them in the soil, though, I don't know nothing. Let's see here. Leo, so in case I lose the pandas, do you recommend nuking that tank or throwing everything out and letting it dry? Is this back to like the Camellanus worms? So I would just use levamisole. You will kill them. If you use it correctly, they will paralyze so long that they starve to death. Oh, God. Excuse me. A dry spot in my throat. I've been trying to drink to prevent this from happening, but a little water out of a former cup of, I can't even remember what the drink was, but not coffee from the coffee place, because Bentley's a weirdo that doesn't drink coffee. Bob Purcell, did you get any fry survival from rainbows in a heavily planted community tank with other tank mates? It's really hard to. I mean, you can. It really depends on the rainbow. The problem is that the rainbows are so aggressive many times at eating, that thing fits in my mouth, and eating it. But there are some rainbows, like the Aves Creek I've seen actually community spawn very, very well. I've heard through a friend that the Alani Wapogas will also just leave their fry alone, and potentially even some of the Frederici. But I haven't had that personally, so. But they're probably because they're in tanks that don't have enough cover or are too small or have too many other fish that are like, tasty treat, humph. The second that, like, they even throw eggs. So, it's possible, yes. But it can be tough. Depends on the species is the big one. Like rads will spawn inside a tank, and quite a lot of their babies will live, and you just slowly have a colony that increases in size by, like, you'll notice every few months, it's like, it looks like there's like 10 or 15 more babies in there that are going to live. It's kind of nice. But yeah, I would just put a mop in, especially if it's all single species, harvest your eggs, and move them to another tank. Rico Stan's talking about how I'll be at Fishtoberfest. Yes, I will. I'll be talking. I don't know about what, but something. Amazon Research Center's here. Hello. Speaking of speakers, Dr. Anthony Mazerol. Gonna be amazing. Was amazing when Dr. Maz came up to Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. It's like, I've watched a few talks. Good dude. Good stuff. Oh, man. Chat jumped. I'm behind. It's because I've been psycho. All right. I'm going to speed through the last couple of questions real fast, and then we're going to take off for the night because I need to go have some dinner. Let's see here. Bob, any tricks to getting Jacobs and I pink to carpet? Yes. Yes. Use something like Brightwell's Rio Oscuro or a similar aqua soil like that that's really nutrient rich. Give them a really good amount of nutrients at the root system, and then something like a Aqua Sky on a 40 breeder level of light. A little bit of CO2, not a lot. I'm talking like 2 bubbles a second. Barely any. It'll take a little bit, but once it starts taking off, then all of a sudden it'll go hog wild on you in like 3 months. I went from almost none to it and my Nurii competing with each other to pack into these teeny tiny spaces between all the other crypts in 3 months with that kind of setup. They actually do way better at lower light levels than with high light levels. This was getting like 7 par at the substrate. Almost nothing. But they're also getting some sunlight, so I don't want to like make it out like they're getting nothing. They're getting some ambient sunlight through a window. But not direct. They weren't getting a ton of light. I would say low to medium. Medium is best if you can get them at the low side of the medium light, like something like 30-40 par. Bingo. Bingo bango. And patience. Patience. Brandon, is black marble like black pearl? Probably very, very similar. I bought mine through a club member so that I didn't have to get them online, but I'd seen black marbles online at the time. I can't tell in the pictures if it's the same leaf size, that black pearl that you're seeing. Probably very similar, though. It has a really beautiful iridescence. I've got a few pictures on my Instagram of it. Trying to catch up. And I know there's some people that are asking, like, several questions. I am kind of skipping you, just sorry, and just because I'm trying to get some folks that I haven't answered questions from yet. But you know, if you have emails into me, don't worry, I'm getting to them as fast as possible. My goal is hopefully to have my email cleared out before I leave for my friend's wedding at the end of this week. So, if you're waiting, within the next few days. E-Littles, I have a 75-gallon with only one Critum Calinostratum. Nice. Do you think your Fluval 3.0 setting is too much for it on its own? 12 to 10, ramps up 2 hours and down 2 hours. Yeah, it might be too much for a Calinostratum because it's such a slow grower. I have my Calinostratums that are in the Guppy Mansion have been like really starting to take off, especially the bigger one that was in back. That thing is looking gorgeous right now. It's just like these big, long, veiny leaves coming out. It just looks fantastic. It's just reaching up, praising the sun, the sun, the fake sun that I give it. And it's starting to kick off some new foliage and looking amazing. The little one is like getting its roots, doing its thing. It'll be kicking off here soon. It's gonna be great. We're all very sad that Rico's not going to join us at the Quadra Crown. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. It's the Triple Crown, I know, but, you know, there's 4 clubs there, dang it. Even though Angfa NA kind of doesn't count. Son of a quack. No, you're not a fan, but I got a new 20-gallon dirt tank. All right. Plant screw, messy. Some need peroxide doses. I have a magnesium deficiency. Want to drain it, add some Epsom salt and replant. Thoughts? Very, very minimal amount of Epsom salt. Very minimal amount. But I think it could work. Brad Smith Studios. I have a 55-gallon moderately planted tank with CO2 and an Aqua Sky. What light percentages should I try starting with? So 55-gallon, a little bit taller than a 40 breeder. If you haven't seen it yet, Brad, go look at my ultimate guide to the Aqua Sky and use, not my pro mode, but my auto mode setting that I use on my 40-gallon breeder, and up basically everything 10% except the blue. If it has room to go that high. I have to remember off the top. I think the whites were already pretty high on that, but I don't think they were 100%. But you should be fine. That'll give you good, like, medium, low light, depending on at the depth or part of the tank you're at. Let's see. Mario, any tips on growing Cryptosporalis Red Tiger and Nurii Rosen Maiden? Provide plenty of nutrients at the roots, especially iron. If you can find, and it's getting very hard to find the companies that make these anymore, any of the root tabs that look like red clay, or just get some Mexican potting clay, put it into small balls and push it down into your substrate to give a little extra iron at the roots. That will help those plants immensely, and then from there, they're slow growers, but under medium and low light amounts, they tend to flourish better than under high light. That would be my advice to you. All right. Whew, jeez. And I got a nose dripping on me because the weather keeps going crazy over here. That drives my sinuses absolutely wild. Leo, what's the site to order again? If you're talking about levamisole, that's Select Aquatics. I will give you a link. 1 second. It's Mr. Greg Sage. I will take you straight to levamisole. Bam, in chat right there for you. selectaquatics.com/levamisole.htm. And then he has great instructions on how to use it too. Plus, if you just email Greg, he will tell you everything you need to know. The guy's a wizard and he's phenomenal. Okay, I'll do one last question, and then I've got to fly. Okay, never mind. 2. Bob Purcell. Will there be a German Fest dinner at Fishtoberfest? I think that's a great themed concept. I don't know if there's any like good German restaurants nearby though. There's one in Tacoma, Washington. It's amazing. Called Rhinehouse. All right. Jason B. I'm looking at moving in the next 4 months or so. I have a few tanks, a 75, a 60, a 45, and a 40, etc. Any tips on moving the tanks? Oof. So it depends on how much hardscape you have. That's the tough part. What I would do in general is this. First, don't keep the fish inside the tanks. Use buckets or some other kind of container that you can keep them secure with nothing randomly hitting you. And what I mean is, don't keep them with rocks that could potentially fall over, or wood that could fall over, or water that's going to slosh around. You don't want to keep those tanks heavy. What you want to be able to do in your tanks is basically drain them down as much as possible. If you have plants, drain it as much as you can. Wrap the top in cellophane after you use like a little mister bottle to mist all the plants really, really thoroughly. You just want to keep it lightly humid for the move. The plants will survive, don't worry, but you don't want to have those tanks weighing 8 million billion pounds. Every gallon of water weighs roughly 8.8 pounds. That's a lot of weight in all those big tanks, right? We don't want to deal with that nonsense. You're going to kill yourself. So, drain all the water out, get it nice and wet, keep the substrate wet. You can have a little bit of water in the substrate, but try to get as much out as possible. If you have hardscape that's not like completely glued together and will move, you're going to have to break your substrate down. Or not your substrate, but your hardscape. And this is just to play it safe, because you don't want to crack a tank, you don't want to break anything, nothing like that, right? This is all about playing it safe. Then, move your tanks, get them in place at the new place, fill them back up with water after you get your hardscape back in there. Keep misting if you're doing new hardscape again, or replacing hardscape, basically making it new. Keep misting, keep the plants wet. Easy peasy, just a spray bottle does the trick. Once you got all that in there, fill it up with water, get all your filtration and equipment going, then move your fish back in. That's the best way. It's a lot more work, but it's the safest way. If you have something like the nano USB pump, that new battery powered pump, anything like that to help keep oxygen going to your fish the whole time, or if you got sponge filters, move that sponge into those buckets, right? So that you got bacteria and filtration going. It keeps your fish good. You don't need a ton of water. You can only fill those buckets like halfway. You don't need to fill them all the way to the top. Leave room for air. And then run just an airline, and you're fine. That's the best way to move fish. Safest. All right. Crypt keeper crawler scrape leaves onto the substrate for iron for crypts. Yes. That's the other trick, but sometimes it's easier to just tell people, like, go find Mexican potting clay at a craft store, make little like BB sized balls of it, and push a bunch of it into your substrate. There's just an iron source forever. Easy peasy. All right, guys. I'm going to call it there. Again, my PSA reminder, because it happened to a coworker and a friend. Make sure that your loved ones know you love them. You never know what's going to happen in the world of human malware and all sorts of other terrible things that are happening in this world. Make sure the people you care about know. Stay in touch with them. Say hi. Got a friend you haven't talked to in a couple months. Reach out. Just say hi, even if it's for 5 minutes. You just never know when they're going to be gone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I know this one's been a little roller coaster ride, but regardless, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.